Hello, all. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. And today we're talking about a new great tool that's introduced with Business Central 2024 Release Wave 1, which is called as Inventory Cost Adjustment Tool. Now, you might not find a great amount of documentation about it on MSDN at this moment, but while watching the launch event videos, I was able to explore this and then test it out. And I think it's pretty important that we talk about it. So, if you had problems while adjusting cost in past in your Dynamics Nav or Business Central, this tool gives you an hope of how Microsoft is listening to the problems that we had with our customers, and I would consider this as a great step toward that direction. So before we get into it, a humble request again to please subscribe to the channel. It helps us to understand how we are doing, what kind of content you guys are liking, and do share your feedbacks as comment to all the videos that you're seeing over here. So in this particular video, we would like to understand how the inventory cost adjustment tool works, what it is, what features or capability it brings to the Business Central, and it's a completely new tool at this moment. So you can surely watch the launch event video if needed. I'll add the link into the first pinned comment for the Microsoft launch event. If I miss something, you surely should go ahead and watch it there. Now, the cost of an item, which is the inventory value that you purchase and then later use to sell, or it might change during the lifetime of it. Maybe you has breakages, it gets expired, or maybe you are manufacturing it. So, or while shipping, you might add a freight cost to it. So the cost adjustment is especially relevant in the situation where you sell the good before you invoice the purchase of those goods. And you can surely read about it on MSD and how adjust item cost works. Now it's majorly around transferring the cost from inbound to outbound calculation, cost of production and assembly, and other additional distribution factor that gets added to it. So in Nav until busy 23, we generally had three ways to run the adjust cost. The first one was automatically on posting. So let me open my Business Central so that we can see it. So the first option that you will see is in inventory setup, where we get into it. And then here is an option to adjust cost posting, automatic cost posting. So when you set this up on your inventory setup page, what happens with that is if it's kind of enabled, then whenever you post a transaction relevant to an item, any adjustment that need to happen of the cost, it happens at the same time. Now this works for some of the customers, but customers who have so many transactions during the day, for them it kind of slows down the system, and that's where there are ways that you can then define it on the system by scheduling on the job queue. And in the latest version of Business Central, even if you just disable it, you get a pop-up here to schedule a job queue to schedule your cost adjustment and posting. And Microsoft have a nice wizard about here where you can just hop through options, and then at the end it kind of creates behind the scene a job queue or a task which runs automatically at a particular given point of time. But then with that, what used to happen is in some cases, if it's a pretty long transaction and there are very heavy transaction during the day, it kind of does not complete sometime. Or if even one of the item has a failure during adjust cost, it kind of rolls back the whole transaction. And that's where there seems to be a need from the customer ecosystem and the partner ecosystem to kind of make it more flexible. And that's where the inventory adjustment tool come into the picture. Now, before we get into it, there is a setup, and let me think about it where it is. So you should be enabling the setup of the adjust automatic adjust cost posting and then test it out. So the first option that you'll see of enabling this, it should be here. Let me see. Okay. Okay. Cost adjustment log. Now this is the new option that gets added into inventory setup, which is cost adjustment logging. And as you can see on the tooltip, it says specify if you want to log the cost adjustment run. So every time you run the adjust cost, it creates a log automatically. And then there are three options. One is disabled, which is by default set. The other one is non-logging, no logging, means don't log anything. And third one is error only. With this, the program will only log cost adjustment entries that have errors if you choose error only. If you choose all, the program will run or create a log of all adjustment run. So you can just set it up. This will become your first step to keep it disabled to error only, where it only logs if there is an error, and all means it logs every transaction that you're doing using this. So now we have a new way to do the cost adjustment. So now let's get into it. We did the setup, and now you need to search for the page in your tell me feature of Business Central to look for cost adjustment page. So let's search for it. Let me search for cost adjustment, and these are the previous options that you have, but now you see the inventory cost adjustment as a new option as tagged as report and analysis. Once you pop it up, what happens is you get a nice worksheet page. This page lists down all your items that you have into your system and also shows you how many items have non-adjusted cost at this moment, when it was last run, when the last successful run was happened, and are there item batches or not. And we'll get into it one by one. Now this tool is not just a replacement of how you do adjust cost, which the previous method that we talked about, but it also adds some capabilities into it. So let's start analyzing them one by one. The first option that you see is show all, which shows you all the item. And then there are other options to only see items which have cost is not adjusted. So if you click on it, it'll apply the filter on cost is adjusted boolean, which is available on the item table. If you say so included, it does show you some of the items, and we'll talk about it, what is so excluded and all, which is none at this moment. So let's take an example of item which are causing problem, or for some reason if you don't want to adjust their cost. So let's say if these are those two items which I don't want to do the adjust cost, what I can do is I can exclude them. So in here somewhere you will have an option to exclude item from adjustment. So as soon as you do that, you will notice that the boolean has been enabled here as I clicked on it, and these two items are now excluded from cost adjustment. So in the show and hide menu, you can just see the excluded item, which are these two, and you can also see only included item. And if you have a big list, you can also see the items which are not yet adjusted. Okay, so that is the first menu. We'll come to the run adjustment cost in a while. The next one is item, which helps you to navigate through all the entries that are created during adjust cost posting. So you can see item ledger entries, value entries, cost adjustment entries, and other relevant entries there. As we did set up on inventory setup, the log per, it kind of shows you what happened during the last run. If you have executed it, you get the details here. Or if you have logged it per item, then it'll show you per item wise what happened and what entries were created. So that's inside the log per option. Let's move to the next one, which is function. We talked about it, how you exclude and how you can then also include. So if I don't want to exclude this one, I can just come here and keep it in disabled to be included into the adjustment. And then there is post inventory cost to GL. So this then gives you the same screen that you see when you do adjust cost. So that batch is also added here. Now let's come down to the two last pieces which we haven't discussed and which are the new enhancement majorly into this area. The one is diagnostic. And before we get into it, let's talk about the first option, which is the run adjustment cost. Now, if you click on this action, what will happen, it'll ask you that for which item or items do you want to run the adjust cost? Is it for the selected item that you have chosen into the list below, or do you want to run it for all the items? So you just do selected and click OK. It'll just run that adjust cost report for that particular item which you have. Now, right now, I guess I have applied the filter on cost adjusted. So let me show all. And you'll notice that this particular item have uh, cost adjustment ran successfully when I did the run adjustment cost. And I'm also able to see the log per run for whatever the filters that I have applied, what is the status, how long it took, and what entries were created if there are any. And then I can do it by run, or if I'm doing it for multiple items, then I can do it per item. So let's see by doing it for 2 items, let's say. When I do run adjust cost for selected item, click OK. It is right now only considering these 2 items. And if I do the run, I'll see 2 records. One where I just ran it for the selected item. The second where I ran it for 2 items which I had selected. But when I look it per item wise, I'll be able to see which adjust cost ran for that particular item. So right now it is doing it based on the selection. So if I come here and do the item, it'll show me the log of this particular adjustment on how much time it took and all. That's not it. And that's the beauty of it. When you click on the drop down, you can run the adjustment cost, which we did in a while. But then there are 3 additional options: add batch and run, and add batch and item batches. So let's try to see what's inside there. So when you see the tooltip of add batch and run, it adds the selected items to a new cost adjustment batch and runs the cost adjustment batch. So let's test it out. So if I select these 2 items, 1960S and 1964S, and then from here, if I do add batch and run, it'll automatically add these 2 items into a batch and will execute the run, hopefully, and run the cost adjustment, which is running somewhere behind the scene. Then additionally, you can add different batches for it. Now what happens with the concept of batches? So let's say you have 300 different items or 3000 items, whatever the number is, that varies from there. But in the meantime, notice with the second option, which is add batch and run, it got ran successfully for these 2 items, and I can see that the cost is adjusted. But now let's talk about the add batch. So if you have 300 items and you would like to run that adjust cost, let's say in a batch of 50 each, what you can do is you can add different batches based on the different filters that you would like to apply. So when you click on add batch, it tells you for which item. So let's see, let's remove this and let's choose these 2. For these 2, I would choose to add batch, and it is just adding batches. It is not running it. So it's just get added into the batch, and you'll notice that there are 2 batches. The first one is for these 2 where I did the add batch and run, and the second one is just for this. But what's happening behind the scene for the batches, that you can see into the item batches. So when you come here, you'll notice that when I kind of set those options, system was able to identify the filters that it should be applying to filter out that batch, and then it sets some parameter which is similar to job queue if you think about it. So there's a batch, the timeout that will run, how many times it will retry, am I trying to post cost to GL, and then the status of it, when it was started, end time, and if there is an error, and the call stack. Now with this, you can create different batches, and the beauty is that these batches will run in a separate user session per batch. So the batch 1 and batch 2 in this scenario that you can see will run parallelly at the same time rather than running one after the other. The other beauty of it is also that the problem that we had in the past is where, let's say out of 300, 125th item had a problem. Until reaching to that point, it takes, let's say, 8 hours to run the batch. But because the 125th item had a problem, it kind of rolls back everything that I've done. And that is kind of handled with the batch. So what you can do is you can create batches, and then when you run the batches, and let's do this add missing item, as I did that, it respected whatever the items that are here, and it created a pipe filter for the items which were not added here. At this point, I can just run that batch, either this batch or that batch. Let's run this. And if for some reason there is an error message that kind of pops up between this item, that item kind of gets splitted into a separate batch, and the system tries to run the remaining item together. So at the end of the process, when you come here, you will notice that you only see items whose cost is not yet adjusted, listed there. And then that becomes your segregated or separate set of items which are causing problems. Okay, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to see the last error message here, and the whole call stack, which then can be sent to us as developers or partners to analyze it further. But okay, don't worry, that's not it. So if there is a problem and I see that it's a problem and I ask for details in my, let's say, Docker environment, or in my on-premise environment that I have, or in my sandbox environment, maybe I'm not able to replicate because there is a mismatch of the item related data. And that's where the new part of this tool is also diagnostic. Now, diagnostic solves that problem. So if there is an item which is causing problems, what you can do here is pick that item or multiple item. If there are multiple, let's say this and this, and you can export the item data. Now, when you do export item data and it is only doing one item at a time, sorry for that, it is not doing for the selection, it automatically downloads a file which seems like a text file, but it is pretty interesting text file. So let's open this text file and see what kind of got downloaded from the system. So this contains all the item details. It seems item unit of measure, and then any other related table data that you might need, the posting groups and other things, and raw material info. And I'm pretty sure this is item ledger entry and other entries that are there. So you can export that data which is causing you problem from your environment, and then let's say on a sandbox or on a development machine where you're doing it, you can import that data back in. What it brings, even the history of that item, and then you can just target that particular item to analyze further as a developer that what's going on. Because debugging or analyzing the code with the set of 300 items or 3000 items may be a problem, but if you have pinned down by using the batches feature that which of these items are causing problem, you can just utilize these two buttons under diagnostic to export the item data and then import it back on a separate environment to test it out. Now, there are other options to reset costed adjusted. So like if this item has costed adjusted and I would like to test it again, I can just reset this, and this will reset that particular item costed adjusted boolean. So this is 1936S. So let's try that. 1936S. Okay, that's not a car. It's a chair in my case. Okay. So if I do this and I apply the filter here, okay, and click OK, you will notice that that item would have been gone. Is it? No, it's still here. So let's say reset cloud is adjusted. Okay, and I would like to reset the assembly order if there are any production order an item. So let's click on it. Okay. Reset job is completed, and you'll notice that the cost is set to be adjusted. Now let's add this item into a batch. Okay, we have done that. Let's go into the batches. Let's choose the last batch which is not started, and I can then run it to see what is happening. So even if you are a developer who's trying to debug the scenario, it's pretty easy with the diagnostic option to replicate the same behavior with just that item which is causing problem, and then maybe if needed debug that. But the last error call stack will give you the whole code execution plan that has been executed to reach to this error message. So that also comes handy while you're trying to solve that problem. Or just that. There's a costing issue detection report. So it's a new report which is added, and it kind of checks the basic data and checks the item ledger entry versus item application entry, quantities on item application entry, average cost, valuation down. So whatever makes sense to you for your customer as a business, you can just choose those options, and this report will kind of start understanding are there any errors that will get generated if you try to run this. At this point, there seems nothing because it's a Coronis database. Last but not least is the delete item data. Remember this. This is only to be used and only available if the environment type is sandbox. Point number one. Point number two, the feature that was baked in to kind of enable this is to kind of analyze that particular item in a separate environment. So if you create a copy of your production to a sandbox, and for other item it was causing problem, I can surely delete that item data, which will not impact your transactional record or the master record, but any other ledger data that has been created will be deleted from this. I know what you're thinking, but I'll stop you there. Don't even think about this tool to do what you're thinking about it. It is just option these are added to kind of analyze the further the process of adjust cost to a very narrow prism, to kind of pointing out where the problem is. So these are the possibilities, and I surely love the batch feature, which allows me to split that into multiple set and sections to then run it. Okay, so before I let you go, let me quickly check, did I miss something? And then we will move further on it. Okay, so we did talk about the setup options, which is on inventory setup, where you need to enable what kind of logging you need. Then you need to come into your new page and test out all these options that we talked about. In case of a failure in the middle, one of the items is causing some problem, the process does not kind of rolls back. If you're using batches, it just removes that item while creating that batch, and then you can see all the items that are causing problems. So we did talk about show hide scenarios. We did talk about exclude include scenario. um, you can, based on the timing factor, you can analyze which of these items are not behaving from a performance perspective and they are slowing down the system. So you have all those options. You can download the ledger data, import into a separate environment and test for it. And remember that the batch options, each batch will run into a separate session. They'll not be kind of blocking each other. You can surely export and import data, and you can reset the costed adjusted boolean, which is available there. There's a new report added for costing issue detection. And then the last but not least is capability of deleting the item data, which as of today is only enabled on your environment type sandboxes. Okay, anything else that I'm missing? I don't think so. So you know the drill, what you need to do. If there is something which I was not able to cover, and do let me know into the comment section. If you think this was useful, hit the like button. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button, and that's okay. If you think this will help your customers or partners or fellow developers, make sure to share it with them. If it makes change to even one individual, I'll be super happy that the content was useful to someone. So if you know someone who is struggling with these kind of scenarios, let them test out the tool with their data. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to the channel and let me know your views about this new feature into the comments to this video. I'll be waiting for them. Okay, so I'll see you sooner than later into the next video. Till then, keep learning and keep sharing. It's the knowledge that you have which you can share and have other people learn from your experiences. So feel free to share whatever you know, and let's help each other to be good developers or consultant or partner, whatever you are. So this sort of Danny signing out, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.